Good morning, evening, or afternoon, everyone. My name is Chris Wallander, and today we are going to be talking about shifting our mindsets. We're going to take a brief visit into who I am and then jump right into shifting these mindsets. The talk today is going to be covering what shifting left is, and as a team, why does it matter to us? We will even be covering some easy wins that you can do as a QA to get the ball rolling for your team. At work, I am TaxAct's Principal Estet and Test Automation Architect. I've been roaming around the QA industry for a little over 13 years now, with over 10 of it coding and another 5 of it working DevOps. Outside of work, I design, develop, and test video games, dabble in machine learning and artificial intelligence, build robots, and even do some blacksmithing. Enough about me. Let's talk about shifting left. There's a fair bit of confusion in the industry still about what shifting left actually means, so let us address that at a high level first. At the highest level, it is an approach to software testing where testing is performed earlier in the life cycle. Oftentimes, we hear about shifting left or sometimes even right in our work. For us in QA, it means reallocating our testing efforts to different locations in the software development lifecycle. Left means closer to requirements, right means closer to release. Ultimately, saying left is a misnomer, as we are simply spreading the effort out over the entire SDLC process. While we may be reallocating that testing effort, it's really a thought process designed to detect issues as cost effectively as possible. This means reduction of cost by finding defects as early as possible, sometimes even before they are written as code. This means in your design documents, your architecture planning, or even in the requirements themselves. Shifting left is primarily seen today in Agile processes, but it can be done in almost any SDLC model. Some things, however, are SDLC agnostic. Today we are going to be focusing primarily on these agnostic opportunities. No matter your SDLC, the core mindset of shifting left is instead of doing all of your testing just before release, there is a testing effort equivalent for every stage of the SDLC process. Earlier I said reallocate, and that does not mean we remove the entire testing effort, but we in effect spread it out, doing parts of the testing effort earlier in conjunction with our team members. This allows us to prevent defects through proactive action, rather than finding an issue later after it's already written in code, drastically reducing the cost of repairing said defect or missed requirement. Let's break down these 4 main pre-release stages and talk about some of the opportunities. During the requirements discovery and documentation phase of a project, inclusion of QA assists the project a few different ways. Typically, this phase is handled through static analysis, reviewing requirements documentation before design begins. Is everything necessary for the successful completion of the project included? Are we considering both functional and non-functional requirements? Are we considering both the external customer as well as our internal customers, such as systems, other applications, developers, and testers? Are we considering compliance? The goal here is to try and identify these gaps in requirements now, where it is still very easy and cost-effective to do so, before the code is even written. With design testing, we are typically working with an architect or dev lead, someone who is sitting down and designing the technical portion of the application. These would be considered your system-level requirements. During this phase, a QA may be looking to make sure all of the individual needs of the different internal and external customers are going to be met. Is the application integrating with all of the systems it needs to? Need additional observability into the application for testing? Test fixtures for test automation? It is at this phase we would call out these missed requirements. It is far easier to call out a missing technical requirement now than it is to ask for it to be added after planning has already happened. Implementation testing is your traditional testing location. Code has been written, checked in, unit tested, and is now sitting in your environment for regression, functional, non-functional, and integration testing. At this stage, we have had several major opportunities to prevent the issue before code was even written. Now, if we catch the issue, we would need to go back to the design or even requirements phase to start over, drastically increasing the cost of the repair. This is what many normal companies today consider a normal testing cycle. During deployment testing, we are validating that the application successfully deployed to the environment. Notice I am not specifically saying to production, as this could be any environment. Typically during this phase, we may see test automation leveraged with process automation through continuous testing practices, such as continuous delivery or deployment. Shift left, first and foremost, is a team-level effort. In the early requirements and design stages, it requires buy-in from their prospective creators. Without their buy-in and inclusion, it drastically limits how far you can take shift left. The very first thing in any shift left effort is the discussion and buy-in. After that, however, there are quite a few things that you can do. The first and easiest thing we can do as a QA is raise awareness of what we are trying to do during our team's planning phase. We can also start pre-creating static test plans that we intend on seeing executed on every code change and getting them automated. API tests are typically the best and easiest types of tests to automate here starting out. If we can convince our developer friends to join us, static code analysis is another great shift left opportunity. There are many great tools out there depending on what language your developers are coding in. Unit testing and continuous integration are also great contributors to the effort. By leveraging these, we can prevent defects at the code level as they are committed to our source control repositories. Test-driven development is another fantastic way to get testing further left as well. Even something as basic as making sure the 3 Amigos conversation from Agile happens regularly is a great way to start. This allows us to help plan and support automation efforts, as well as identify any missing non-functional requirements. When talking with our product owners, it's going to be all about requirements. An easily started practice is having a requirements analysis session where you as a team sit down and talk through the requirements individually to make sure it is readily understood by all. This is typically something people would do before they begin committing to user stories or work items. Most people may be doing something like this today with Agile story refinement sessions. Another potential but harder to accomplish item is the adoption of behavior-driven development. It is an extension of test-driven development building upwards. It builds nicely upon test-driven development and goes a long way towards clear business-level communication and collaborative effort. BDD, however, also requires specialized tools and a full business commitment. Without both, it actually can become an anti-pattern and slow you down drastically. Ultimately, shifting left despite having a few easy-to-pick-up practices can actually be very difficult to accomplish. As I stated before, it is a team effort, but not only beyond that, it means every person in the team is advocating for quality like a tester. If you do not have a full commitment from your team, shifting left becomes exponentially harder, if not impossible, to fully implement. As QA, while we can raise the conversation and begin evangelizing the topic, if our team members are siloed, some of the practices we discussed can become hindrances rather than helpful items. Let's assume for a moment everyone in the team is on board. For this to work, we need a plan. The first part of the plan is that everyone on the team owns quality and is responsible for testing. This may mean setting some early, reasonable, key performance indicators to help show the current quality level. The whole team should know what the quality standards are and what qualitative success looks like. Test automation is going to be critical in this process. This means unit testing as well as what is considered traditional regression, integration, functional, and non-functional automation. Automation in these areas allow testing to accelerate and become more reliable. Having this automation in place allows teams to begin leaning heavily into continuous integration. As team member ownership of quality improves, QA can begin assisting with code reviews, analyzing written unit tests to look for additional scenarios, as well as being a solid introduction to learning to code for themselves. Learning to code helps the tester think more about what they may need in order to be successful with automation. It can also help them with identifying additional missed requirements. To be fair here, we are not expecting any individual member of the team to perform every role, but this helps testers design better tests or modify existing tests. Standardized tooling goes hand in hand with this team-level effort. If your company is a Java company or a C# company, you are going to want to use that for your efforts. Shared tooling between Dev and QA drastically helps communication and accessibility across the team. You'll end up building out process automation, so it's good to not only be standardized, but stable. Finally, and most importantly, is a testability first mindset. This means as each work item goes into the refinement phases, talking up front how to test it, how to automate it, what may need to be created by the team in order to automate it successfully becomes fundamentally critical. We talked about what shift left is. We talked through a high-level plan of successful ideals, but what we haven't covered yet is why should we even bother to shift left? We talked about it helping you look for missed requirements and reducing the cost of defects, but let's dive a little deeper. According to the National Institute of Standards and Technology in May 2002, a defect in production can cost many hundreds, if not thousands of times more to repair in cases of security defects. In this worst-case scenario here, in the 1995 study, a defect found in the operation and maintenance phase could cost up to 2,900 times more if an engineering change order is required as compared to just fixing it at the requirement level. Imagine for a moment what 2,900 times the hours of all of the individuals who work together to build that software might look like. Over the years, software has become more complicated, many more moving parts, and because of it, much more expensive to fix. As an industry, this is currently a massive problem at the time of this report, in the scale of $50 to $60 billion lost a year in the software development industry. It is estimated that since 2002 that this could be many hundreds of times worse today. The study showed some pretty extreme examples. For most companies, it is closer to 30 to 90 times, which can still be pretty draining. Ultimately, it is going to be different business per business. However, fundamentally, it is a very expensive exponential problem. While this is good information to have, business leaders will want to consider doing their own analysis to see if shift left is right for their business and their bottom line. While QA can tackle a small portion of the process alone, as we discussed, they will be unable to tackle it entirely on their own. As an individual team, shifting left enables you to increase the efficacy of your software development process, improve your product quality, and prevent defects rather than repairing them. Fundamentally, bringing the QA in early, even during the initial brainstorming sessions, increases their understanding of how the app is planned and developed. Fundamentally, these practices assist the team in increasing the quality coverage as well as speeding up the time to market. By collaborating and going together, they are actually going faster. This is one of the rare cases where trying to go alone actually ends up costing you more in the long run. An individual QA trying to implement shift left without their team ends up not having all of the components of shift left that make it successful. Shift left succeeds due to the increased ownership when the team comes together in conjunction with placing automated checks at as many stages of the process as possible. A QA without the appropriate buy-in would be left out of design discussions or cause inter-team conflict when asking, or worst case, pressuring his or her team to put in process changes. A QA, for example, attempting to roll out true BDD without the product owner would be more than doubling their own effort to fully implement the practice. The same goes for a QA attempting to put in developer-oriented items, such as unit testing or static analysis tools into the code. Now that we have talked through some perks of shifting left, let's talk through some common challenges. The number one most common reason shift left is not already happening is related to lack of leadership support and alignment with current processes. As most businesses stand today, most business initiatives are prioritized on meeting deadlines first and foremost, with quality being included as an afterthought. The common thought is if the product does not go out, then it cannot be with quality. But if the product goes out and is of poor quality, at least there is a product. To counter this mindset, leadership needs to be in agreement that quality is just as, if not more important than releasing the software. This commonly is done with companies that shift left, through goal-level incentivization and company-level buy-in. Oftentimes, a cost-benefit analysis of defects can also help here. When we talk of process alignment, we do not mean just the motions that a company goes through, but also the tooling alignment that supports these processes. For companies doing Agile, you may have heard in the Agile Manifesto the words, individuals and interactions over processes and tools. In the shift left mindset, the tools and processes are enablers for the individuals to do their jobs well. Sometimes people, processes, do need to shift in order to work in tandem, forming a symbiotic relationship for the betterment of both. The major challenge here is moving from an old system to a new system. As a new system is picked, while people may have specific tools they absolutely love, the integrations between the tools are absolutely critical. We want to replace manual process with automated process in order to keep things smooth. Switching to something new, if it does not support and automate your processes, is often a bad pick that hinders you. Next in resistances is simply a lack of testing resources. Moving to shift left is not something that is done at the snap of the fingers. It takes an early investment in time in learning tools, implementing them, and adjusting processes. Typically, teams slow down for several sprints once they have the tools implemented before they speed back up again. A team that is already fully committed is not going to have time to implement shift left while still carrying on normally. This would double their workload. The effort will need to be planned from the ground up. This means carving out time to research and implement the required tools. As with all new things, individuals may be skeptic that it can help their team or not. Oftentimes people see the testing effort shifting around and may ask the question, how does the same amount of testing reduce the risk? And the answer here is that it does not. The maturation of the team, asking the right questions at the right time, is ultimately what provides the value of shifting left. Typically, a junior QA may not know what questions to ask or topics to bring up during the different phases. This is a common problem even in Agile, as both require a team to be cross-functional members, bringing maturation in their specific skill set to the table. In this scenario, even standard testing practices may struggle during the testing phase when there is inadequate testing. Shifting left is both a culture item as well as a training piece. Very few individuals like change. They're not certain of, and shifting left takes some of the testing effort of the testers and moves it to the team itself. This can cause some panic if a team is already feeling overworked. This is where conversation and training can come in, both in the mindset, processes, and tooling in order to perform the tasks. Another common resistance is a lack of tester representation in the early phase of design and development. This is a common mindset that testing is not important until there is code deployed to a testing environment. During initial project planning, typically testers are not invited, either through a mindset of trying to save the tester time to test, or that there is a belief there is nothing to test yet. There is even a belief in some areas that automation can solve everything. While automation allows teams to go faster, it cannot discover missed requirements, nor can a tester begin work in parallel if requirements are not known. As we wind down today, let's do a short recap. Shifting left can save a business a lot of money by helping identify missed requirements early, but it cannot overcome low team maturation. It takes time and effort to implement. This means that you must have a solid action plan in order to implement it, or you risk burning out your teams and trying to get going. This is not something that can be successfully tackled alone. It is a team effort, and while you can perform some smaller tasks that lean into it, without the full team engagement, it can become a hindrance rather than a help. Hopefully after our talk today, we all may be taking a moment to think of how shifting left can help us and our teams deliver higher quality software to our customers. If you have any additional questions or would simply like to talk about shifting left, please feel free to visit me on LinkedIn. Again, my name is Chris Wallander. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.